gentlemen,
Good evening.
woo, it has been a wonderful year. I am so pleased that I'm finna end my 2020 with a bam, bam. Cause baby, honey, I done went to Africa. What? I done pulled one in from Senegal, West Africa. Because on the Debra Show, we like to take different approaches and be in different places. I got my sisters and my matriarchs with me. I got Osa handling it up in Boston. Osa, say something.
Hey,
All right, all right. And I got my other matriarch handling it from Houston. Eric, come say something.
Peace, everyone.
All right. And we got our main feature, our special guest. His name is Boubacar Diop.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
yeah, it's like that. Boubacar Diop.
One
I'm
love.
telling you to be drenched
Yeah.
in his tone, in those African tones. Every day when I see him is such a blessing because we here in America, as African Americans, that's something that we miss is the sound of our own tones. You
Yes.
know,
Mhm.
and every chance we get to be around our brothers and sisters from the motherland, that are y'all really privileged to still know who you really are, Booba, and to still
Mhm.
have your own language intact while we, your brothers and sisters over here in America, in the
Mhm.
Western perspective, we scrambling for our identities.
Mhm.
Okay, we done evolved from being colored to Negro to
Mhm.
Afro American to black.
Yep.
We just want to know, and so you should, I always tell all of my brothers and sisters that I get to meet from Africa, uh, that you all are truly blessed, truly,
Mhm.
because you still have your roots intact.
Yeah.
You still have
Mhm.
your traditions intact. So
Mhm.
we are going to get into everything. So without further ado,
Mhm.
I'm going to let Boubacar Diop from
Mhm.
Senegal, West Africa. Our topic is love and relationships the African way. So we're going to get it straight from the we ain't gonna do media and all these stories that we read about in their story
Mhm.
about us.
Mhm.
The universe and the ancestors said we're gonna get it straight. We're gonna get it straight from the motherland, Senegal, West Africa. Come on, Boubacar.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Boubacar. I go by Bouba. Bouba. I am from Senegal, West Africa, partially. I have some Jamaican family as well. I grew up in Senegal. Most of my time growing up, I was in Senegal. I've spent some time in Europe, in France. I have a family of immigrants as well. So basically, I've been lucky to see three continents. So I have a different perspective because I've seen the world among five continents. I've seen three of them. I've visited 35 countries, 17 cities. I've seen Black people in different part of the world. So basically, that. It's been my experience. I left home really early. I left when I was 16. I never returned. I go home every year for vacation, but I've left just to explore the world and see have a different perspective. And I've been in America for 10, 11 years now. I went to college here. I came here and I played soccer. I went to Portland University, play soccer for them, and then later on I was transferred to SNU, South Northern University here in Oklahoma City. So that's just to sum it up, kind of, and we'll dig deep into it as we go. But that's how I ended up here in Oklahoma. It's been a journey, and this I had my own. I'll say I had my own, just like everybody else. I had my own ideas about other Black people from the diaspora. But whenever I started traveling, then wherever you thought it was, that's not what it was.
Mhm.
So basically, that's where the perspective came from, and then hopefully we'll be able to go into this conversation and then share knowledge and wisdom.
That's exactly what we want. Also, is there anything that you'd like to say as we go further into love and relationships the African way?
Yes, love and relationship the African way. I have a lot to say about that. I think that for us, mainly African, and I would say from Senegal because Africa is a continent. So even me being in America is a blessing because I'm able to meet Kenyan, people from South Africa, Nigerian. These are African that I would never see if I did not really travel. So
Mm.
even through that journey, I'm able to learn more about them. I've lived with a guy from Congo before when I was in college, and I find out we didn't have nothing in common. I've dated a Nigerian girl and then got to learn a lot. We don't have nothing in common. Like it's a big continent. So I think from Senegal, I can only speak for Senegal because that's where my mom is from. That's where I'm mainly from. I think the love and relationship beyond it starts. I think it starts with a mother and a son. There's a for Senegalese people, and I can guarantee you, maybe 9 out of 10 Senegalese people can tell you the same thing. I think we have a very special relationship with our mother. If
Mm.
you ever go to Senegal, every Senegalese man you're gonna see, we are very close to our mothers, and I think that that's what kind of shapes how we view women, how we want to treat women. Now, I'm not saying everything is perfect, but at least if you come from a decent family or if you had mentors or people who has a little bit of wisdom, that's where it come from. Like I'm very close to my mother. All of my friends that I know from Senegal, they really really close. It's like almost me and you talk about it at work sometime.
Yes.
Like, I was telling you the other day, I know one thing that I always got to take care of is I know if my mom is happy with me, if my mom prays for me, like I feel like a lion. And then that's something that we were raised that way. You were raised that way to where, oh, if your mother is not happy with you, nothing is gonna work with life. And now, is it true? It's not true. I'm not gonna dive into the religious part and the spirituality, but we are raised and we were raised that way. Literally, they tell you your mother back home. If you go to Senegal, they tell you that your mother is a rock and you are an egg. So if you go hard on your mother, you're gonna break. If your mother is not happy with you and goes hard on you, you're gonna break. It's kind of like, that's kind of like the mentality. So like you wanting to please your mother, wanting to please your mother all the time, and just all you want to hear as a man growing up is having your mom finally say, you know what, I'm happy with you. This is what I wanted for you. This is how I raised you. I'm praying for you, and you're going to the top. And I think that for us, that's what's more important before you go into other relationship with different females, growing up, dating, or even finding a wife. So and I think that kind of helps because um, that kind of developed a love and a soft part for female.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was telling you the other day, I believe that our females are very spoiled. I did not know that until I started traveling. I came to America and I was shocked. I see female, they do too much here. Female do too much. Our females are babies. My sisters, they baby. Everything they want. Like you know what I mean. I'm not saying everything is perfect, but in that sense, it's like if you have a brother, if you have a husband, if you have a male figure in your life, you pretty much don't do nothing.
What do you mean? Okay, so describe don't do nothing. Do nothing as like what?
Well, like you come to the Western world, and that's something that I saw in Europe as well when I was in Europe and also in America. I think that, and it's just different. I'm not saying this is better than the other one, but it's just different how female are being approached here. It's like the female are more, they almost being treated as a man here. It's like 50-50, it's 50-50. Now, when you go to a place like where I'm from, our females are babies. You know what I mean? You don't cuss at them. You don't touch them. You protect them. You know what I'm saying? Like you take care of them financially. That's a sign of being successful, right? So if you're a male who makes money and you have all that, but your females are not being taken care of, and when I say your females, I mean your mother, your aunts. Like when I go back home to Senegal for 15 days, sometimes I end up not even having fun because I gotta go drive see all of my aunts, and I have a lot of them, and I have to go sit down and show them love. You know what I mean? I gotta go see my grandma and show her love. Those are your females. Same thing with my sisters. Everything that my sister, I have two sisters. Anything they want, they both live in France. It doesn't matter. Anything they want, even if they find a product online that's here in America, I have to figure out a way to go get it, put it on the mail for them. So that's more, So that's kind of like the relationship. Like for example, this is a great example. Like when I think that when I came here, I saw the female doing a lot. I see that here female are very strong. It's almost like they are left alone to like carry a lot of loads. So basically, when I go home and I have like people that I know, especially females, when they complain, I'm like, no, you guys don't even know what you have actually. You don't know. You guys don't have the only responsibility, which is the biggest responsibility. The biggest responsibility that the female carry is to make sure that the household is running smoothly. You know, the children. So because we believe in our culture, we believe that the main piece in a family is the mom. That's what we believe. In fact, if you want to, we believe there's saying that say if you want to fix a community, you fix your females. You know, those are ideas and thoughts. You know, it's like if the female of a community are not good, you can't have a good community. They say we worry about the men later because if if the females are good, they're gonna contain the man. They're gonna make sure that the men's are good because that's how powerful female are. Like for example, a female can have two hearts beating at the same time because you have your heart, and if you're pregnant, you have another heart beating. It's been proven scientifically. If you put two heart in a man's chest, our brain explodes. So those are the things, but nothing is perfect. There's a lot of things that I see. Also, like for me, I have a different perspective because traveling, I pick stuff from different cultures. I've picked a lot from this community. I really love the way people do here, like going on dates. Like back home, for example, that's something we need to work on. Like I tell my brother, I used to go home and he was dating his now wife. Back then they were girlfriend and they were doing what couple does. They were going on dates, being cute. Now they're married. I go home. He's not taking this lady out no more. That's something really bad that we do. Now you come to America. If you're dating somebody here or if you're married, going on a date is part of a routine. To keep that relationship going. So like for me, it's like I pick and I get to pick and choose, from this community and from this community. And then it gives me, because before when I was home, I thought everything was great. It's like, this is what I know, we're the best. And then you started traveling, you're like, oh, okay, this and this, we're doing it wrong in my eyes, but we have these great qualities. So can I take this and incorporate? Does it make sense?
Mhm. So let me ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so of what role does your father play in your life?
Oh, yeah. For me personally, my dad came from a village. I did not have the same upbringing. I did not need nothing. By the time I was 8 or 9 years old growing up, we had a big house. We had drivers. We had maids. He really made it for us. But we stayed humble because we used to go to his village and see his mom back then. My grandma, he was still alive. He was 95 years old. So we got to see the village, and if you see the condition where he grew up, how he was born, you know that this dude had to, like, he had to carry over 6 or 7 families beside his family.
Mhm.
Because in his belief, he was like, he was the baby. So he was the only one who had a chance to go to school, and he was really brilliant. He got sent to Canada. He was blessed that way. So whenever he came back home and he had that work going, for him the money wasn't his money. He's like, okay, this is for my family, this is for my brother, because I got to carry him and his family, and then this. And so he had a lot of responsibilities. So basically my relationship with my father was, he was a king. Honestly, he was a king, because whenever my dad got to come home, I was 12, 13, but I had a job in the house. Whenever my dad came, I have to go get his bag for him while he's resting. Somebody's getting his lunch ready. I'm making his special tea, cleaning his car before he has to go back to work after his break. Unless he comes home and open up himself, like whenever he had a day off, where he comes in and we'll go to the ocean and hang out. He was very chill and he liked to play. But other than that, it's like the king is home. And that wasn't him doing that. It was my mom who raised it that way.
Mhm.
My mom used to tell us, hey, your dad is tired. Your dad take care of maybe 14, 15 people, 6 families. And he never fails. And he's a lion. And you guys see what kind of lifestyle you have. So the minimum you could do is whenever he comes home, make sure he doesn't need nothing. If he's sleeping, if he's taking a nap, you can hear the flies. Nobody talks.
All right.
That's, and we enjoy doing that. We enjoy doing that. Like I said, even when I travel, I hear people always cry about not getting a lot of attention with their dad. See, I did not have a lot of time with my dad, and it did not bother me. But I probably had like maybe 2 or 3 great conversation, and each one of those conversation, it was a book. was a book, and I'm still digging deep. Even though he passed away, I'm still taking from that.
Yeah.
You know, like for example, my dad told me, you know, one of the advice he gave me before I went away overseas. He told me, he said, hey, don't. He said, the only thing that I want you to pay attention here. He said, you're gonna fail on everything. He said, you're gonna fail on school, work. You can, you know, it's up and down. You sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. He said, that's just life. He said, you're gonna be fine. He said, one thing that I want you not to fail in is the woman you're gonna marry. That was something big for him.
Mm.
He said, don't fail that one. He said, make sure you marry somebody who's compatible with you, somebody who has the morals and you know the qualities that you want. And he used to say, like, I've seen my dad really make money and have success in different areas, but he always said that his only success was my mom until he passed away. That's how he talked to her. He said the only thing that he was really proud of that he got to marry my mom because he saw my mom raised us the way he wanted us to be raised because he did not have the time. He was only worried about getting the money for us to have everything we needed. But whenever he was home, he said, I see you guys talk and move, and I'm really proud, and I know it's your mom. So based on that, you know, that's one thing he really focused on, like making sure that, hey, fail on everything, but make sure you don't fail on the female you're gonna bring home.
So is there like are there certain qualities that you look for, and does your mother have any control um in the females that you select? Does she get some kind of say? I mean, what is the tradition of the
Yeah.
families participating in the selection of your mates?
Yeah, I think that that kind of, you know, we kind of move forward a little bit with time with that. You know, my mom and dad, they both intellectuals. They both went to school. They both traveled the world. So I'm lucky on that in that sense that I don't have parents who kind of like choose for me. But when I go home in the deep family, when I go to the village, some people still going with that tradition to where your mother is gonna choose most likely for you, or if she doesn't choose, she has to approve. When I was growing up, since I was in the Western world a lot, I criticized that growing up. I really did. That's one thing that when I was talking to my peers, I didn't really like that, and I was always saying I'm thankful that my mom is not that way.
Mhm.
But at this point of my life, I really understood why our ancestors were doing that. You know, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. I told him we might have to go back to that. There's a reason why they used to do that because when you're out in the world, you're picking and choosing. You don't know who you're picking. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
And then 80% of my friends who went and picked randomly, it always failed. Now I know a good 20% of people that I know that it's not necessarily that somebody chose for them, but you know, like your mother will say, hey, you see my friend such and such, her daughter, like pay attention to her. I want you to start talking to her. We're not gonna force you, but I'm directing you there. Put your eyes there. See if you can take her on a date. See if you like her. Now, if you go and talk to her and you go on a couple dates and you find out, oh, I like her, then they're gonna facilitate everything else for you to be in a relationship. And then the reason why they did that because they usually what they do in the culture is they look at the female you're trying to date. They look at her mother.
Mhm.
They're gonna look at they know her mother about her qualities.
Mhm.
They're like, oh, okay, if her mother is that great, you know, and she was raised by her, hopefully you have a better chance of having those qualities in her.
Mhm.
And it might sound different, but 90% of those marriages they go through. There's no divorce. Usually it works. There's a good 10% maybe that doesn't work, but 90% it works. 90% of the time it works because your mother will choose for you, and they're usually gonna choose somebody who comes from a good family where everything that they think is structure, as far as the structure and the basis is already there. I did not go through that. I never. My mom is very progressive in that sense. I, my mom will be, you just let her know, and she'll pray for you. Uh, so I don't have to deal with that. But if my mom ever really point something at me, I won't disregard it. I will pay attention to it because in our belief, that's what it is. Like if you marry your mother, we talk about that. Marry your mother.
Mhm.
And it's marry your mother, meaning that those qualities that you love so much about your mom, if you can have that in a female, it will work. um I don't know. I don't know if everything is perfect, but there's a lot of good things that we have in our cultures, and I did not know that until I started traveling. and then you start seeing different perspective. You're like, oh, okay, this is something that we do that's actually not bad. But also you see the bad side as well. So
Right.
everywhere you go in the world, there's a curse and there's a blessing.
You're right.
Like, for example, polygamy. Polygamy, having more than one wife, that's something that we really do in Senegal.
You really
And
do? You do that in
oh,
Senegal?
yeah, it's part of the culture. Yeah, I mean, I have uncles and aunts, who are in polygamous relationship. And I can remember, for me personally, growing up, I always told my mom that I don't never want to have two wives. My mom used to ask me why. I'm like, man, the hate that it created in families, you know what I mean? The tension and, siblings not getting along because you're going to side with your mom, you guys have the same father, but you hate each other. Usually in those relationships, the people that I see who makes that kind of relationship work, those are the people who are very spiritual, where God is the centerpiece. But most of the time, when the dad passes away, it goes down. You know what I mean? It's like fight over houses, fight over wealth. And just at a really young age, I've always excluded myself from that part of the culture. I've always said, I'm not about this because I've seen so much hurt. Like I've had aunts, that I look at them in their eyes. Like you grew up with somebody and they're really joyful, and that day their husband is marrying another woman, you just walk by them and you could feel the pain. You could it's like this is your aunt, and then her attitude. She's always laughing. She's always joyful. But you see that day she's trying, but you could look at in her eye and see the pain. And then usually the way it happens is not really nice because it's like, oh, your first wife, usually that's the one you've been dating since childhood. That's the one that been there when you were broke. And what we believe, a female build a man. See, my mom always say, if you're a dirty man, it's okay. If you marry a clean wife, your house will be clean. But now, if you're a dirty female, there's problem going on because even if your husband is clean, it's gonna be hard to keep that house going in the clean way. Those are things that we believe. So if you've been with somebody that long and they help build you, and now you're on the top of the world, you're on your 40s, money is here, the house is there, and then you're gonna go marry somebody else, and then now you have to be here 1 week and there 1 week. One of my friends was telling me, man, think about us men. I don't think back home the men really put themselves in the female shoes when it comes to that subject. Like, hey, think about your wife that you've been with 20 years, getting a little bag ready because this is the first time they're gonna go spend time with the new wife. And you're gonna see them walk out of the house,
So does the first wife get to select the second wife? Does she have anything to do with that?
Well, it depends on the man. Now, like everywhere you go, men's are men. There's some men's, they have the money, and it's acceptable. It's part of the culture, so nobody's gonna look at you weird, right? So they run the show the way they want to run the show, and usually it destroys the first family. But I've seen also cases to where the first wife is very involved. I've actually seen one where the husband was telling the new wife that, "Hey, this my first wife. Like, she made this process for easy for me, and she's everything to me. If you're gonna come on and bring problem, I will choose her over you.
Mm.
So make sure you leave her alone and you give her peace." But that's like maybe a good 5% among men. Most of the men is just like, I, I don't know. It brings a lot of problem into the communities. That's one thing that. So like when I went to Tunisia, I was in Tunisia in North Africa. They had the same culture, but in 1987, they put it in their constitution. That's like, hey, it's over. From 1987, nobody was allowed to have a second wife. They said anybody who had it, keep it. But from 1987, we're cleaning this thing up. So now, if you go over there today, nobody has two wives unless you're 90 years old. You
So
know,
is that an economical reason, or because they realize that it brings about a particular type of friction that degrades the community?
well, I think that time moves forward, and I think that the biggest problem of Africa, especially West Africa, the biggest problem is that we live too much in archaism. You got to move with time, because if you really go through history and understand why our ancestors used to do that, it was totally acceptable because back then a man used to have acres of land, right? You did not go get a job. You have acres of land, and the more children you have, the better kingdom you had.
Mm.
Okay, so therefore, it's like, they did that. They had like big houses and big lands, and you had four wives and 30 kids, and you run this show, and everybody was together. 500-600 years ago, 700-800 years ago, it was acceptable. And then because if you're marrying two female, you should be able to take care of them equally. Now, what we're seeing back home, time has changed. Now, your wife works at the bank, you work. Your wife might make a little bit more money than you, and she's gonna help you build up, right? And now that you're finally breathing a little bit, and she gave you three kids already, four kids, you're gonna go get this other younger girl. I don't think that's cool because you can't be fair in the 21st century doing that. First of all, you don't have lands no more. You're not working in the field no more. Now you're working in an office. Okay, so time has moved forward. I think that the now we have religion. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, if you're Christian. A lot of those things came before the religion.
Okay, now
So,
let me halt you right there.
mhm,
You said now we have religion. What did you
mhm.
have before you had Christianity and Islam? Because now you're talking about foreigners moving in and taking over and bringing in their
Yeah,
tradition.
yeah. But what we had before that was darkness. It wasn't nothing else. If you really understand Africa, the curse. Like this is gonna be a little bit a harsh topic, but for me personally, I studied this. I went deep into it. The curse of Africa came from that. The curse of Africa came from voodoo. Came from voodoo. It was a terrible time. It was a time it was lawless. People used a lot of voodoo with each other back then. Before we had that, I mean, there was big nations. There was big empires. But where did voodoo came from? Voodoo came from that time. That's the time we messed more with voodoo than anything else. Now religion came and said you can't do that no more. You can't do that. Doesn't matter if you're Christian, if you because we're talking about the prophets, we're talking about Jesus Christ, we're talking about Muhammad. These people don't believe in voodoo. They tell you, hey, treat your neighbor right. You know what I mean? Pray for each other. It's love time. This is like the time of alignment. So like for me, it's very hard. It's like if I go home, you'll see somebody who's really involved in the community, right? Doing good things. Oh, you're building mosques, you're building churches, you're helping the poor kids and you're doing all these things. But then tomorrow you're gonna go to see like a witchcraft or a voodoo person to say, you know what, this person, I want you to destroy this person for me. It's just contradictory. I'm not. That's one thing that I know that was really heavily done back in the days that is still there. The voodoo is still there, and I think the curse came from there. That's what I believe. I believe the curse came from how deep we met with the
Okay,
voodoo.
so now my understanding and or overstanding of voodoo, um,
Mm-hmm.
because one of my spiritual fathers was a Vodun, and he taught us that voodoo or Vodun meant protective spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And he did warn us and say, it's always about be careful of which Babalawo or Ialorisha that you utilize, because to him, voodoo or vodun was not bad initially.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
we didn't use it that way initially. Yet, like you say, everything is not perfect. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so we have to consider a timeline,
Mm-hmm.
and not, because when you say dark, I think this is where we began to, with Africa and here in the Western perspective, those of us who are African American, as we try to bridge the gap, and reach
Mm-hmm.
back to our roots.
Yeah,
And you can probably help with this.
absolutely.
For us, when you say dark, you
Mm-hmm.
for us that means good, because in the beginning was darkness. So it's
Mm-hmm.
seen as dark for a lot of African Americans here in the Western part of diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
We have taken the connotation and
Mm-hmm.
flipped it. Dark is good, because I
Mm-hmm.
remember even studying some of Africa history, that white, and we talking about white, was looked upon as being as bad, because we got to go back to Neolithic, Paleolithic, before the time of the blue bloods,
Mm-hmm.
before the time of the foreigners, uh,
Mm-hmm.
came and began to interlope, and we began to integrate and marry outside
Mm-hmm.
of our culture and outside of our tribes. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing I know for sure, that our attitude here in America with many
Mm-hmm.
African American, we tend to think of dark as being good,
Mm-hmm.
because over here we were already taught that
Yeah.
everything about Africa was bad,
Mm-hmm.
that it's the dark continent, that
Mm-hmm.
everything black, with anything that would have given us pride as the
Mm-hmm.
descendants of,
Mm-hmm.
we was stripped of that.
Mm-hmm.
So and so to hear you say it the way you're saying it, because I get it, that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people misuse the power of
Yeah.
manipulating the forces,
Yeah.
yet it didn't.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna
Okay, go
clarify.
ahead, come on.
Yeah, I'm gonna clarify that because for like we are like for me, we are very blessed, right? So
Mhm.
like when I choose my words and I talk about that, my meanings are different. Like I had a very interesting experience. That would be a perfect thing to talk about that. There is a guy named JT. I love him. He's very popular in Oklahoma. He used to play soccer, football for OU, and he was a champion in 2001. Everybody knows JT in Norman. He's a big timer.
Right.
I used to work with him, and I heard him one time made a comment. Um, like me and him was standing in the office, and he was like, he's like, oh man, I'm actually you're actually darker than me. And he kind of made a comment, and I told him, JT, I told him I told him, when you say that now, you're scaring me because you have three beautiful daughters, and I know your daughters, his wife is white, so okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but your daughters are light skinned, but it doesn't matter, they're gonna be labeled as black. So now when you started talking about who's light, I said, you gotta understand, I grew up among my peers, so my confidence and how strong it is before I get out of my community. It's like everything I saw was black, and the darker you were, the more beautiful you got, older girls. So so like I have a so I'm like, so you have that problem because you grew up in that community. So unfortunately, but I told him you have to change that. So when I say dark times, for what I was trying to say with that is voodoo. Yes, there is a good side. Like, when you go to natural medicine, how to heal somebody, how to help somebody, there's that side. But there was a time that we met with the bad side, the bad energy, as black people in Africa.
Mhm.
So when we talk about the white people coming in, or even before the white people, the Middle Eastern came in and invaded, or anybody else who came and invaded. The reason why that was so easy for them, because by the time they were coming, we were already having too much issue because of tribe issues, right? Empires, you have, like, you go to history, you'll see this big fight between empires. So like even slavery, like a lot of people, they think that, oh, my own brother sold me. No, it wasn't like that. Africa is a big continent. It's kind of like Argentina is fighting with Cuba. Okay, and now Argentina is winning the fight, so they're gonna go enslave the Cubans, and then they're gonna turn around and sell them because they don't really care about them because they're in a war. That's what it was. Nobody in your tribe never sold nobody from their tribe. Okay, but if my empire was fighting with your empire, and you know what started that? Too much power.
Okay.
Okay, so it start with growing up, creating an empire, being powerful, being blessed, and starting getting away from what makes you successful.
Mhm.
Okay, start, and it's not only about black people. Every race done this. You have like Egypt was up, and they started messing up. They started doing voodoo stuff, and then they went down. Same thing. Even America, you could see, even Europe in the 1800s, they were really big. Then they started doing wars and doing this, and they went down. Every big power does the same thing. So like when the African was up, that's what they messed with the voodoo, and they started fighting among them. So now, anytime you started fighting between you, it's easy for somebody else to come in and use that.
Right.
That's what happened. But it's just a decline of a empire. Every empire declines like that. You can't be up for so long. People got to understand that Africans were on top for so many years. You have to have that decline. Like right now, there's a lot of African kids taking the ocean Atlantic trying to get to Europe, taking these little boats, and a lot of them are dying.
Mhm. Yes,
I
I
don't know.
heard
I
that.
don't know if you guys heard about that.
Yes.
So So I go home and people want to talk about that like it's a disaster. Well, yes, it's a disaster. We don't want to lose our kids that way. But it's like, oh, it's nothing new. The European, like, you think Christophe Colomb came by himself? Do you know how many Christophe Colomb died in the way of the ocean before one of them made it here? Even that story might not be the true story. But when the European were going to Africa, do people know how many millions of Europeans died through that same ocean Atlantic trying to go find a better life because back then Europe was messed up? So everybody's gonna get their turn. Everybody's gonna get their turn. I have a different opinion about it. I don't really feel bad. I think that it's still early enough for Black people. Even when we talk about slavery, it's barely 400 years, so it's still early. But you take the Jewish people. They were enslaved way before the Black. But it took them 2,000 years to get out of it. It took them 2,000 years to say, you know what, we're tired. Let's get together. So all the Jewish people around the world, they got together. They put their money together. Doesn't matter if they're in Europe, if they're in America, if they're in Jerusalem. And that's how they started gaining power back in the 90s. And now they're the most powerful community in the world because they just kind of tired. They was tired of it. They said, let's just put our money together and work together. It took them 2,000 years to get there. Now when we talk about the Black community, slavery was literally 400 years ago. That's why I always tell African Americans travel. Do you know how much African American people are loved around the world? Like Africans, they love African Americans. Like if me and you go to Africa, you're gonna get a privileged treatment. Because people know the story. People know that African Americans are the only Black community who are able to break away from slavery in 300, 400 years. That's genius. Any other races took them around 2,000 years. So we're still really early in the process. And I think what's gonna happen, I think that we're gonna get to a point where there's gonna be solidification again. I think there's gonna be again, because it's just a cycle, you're gonna get tired of it. The day that Black people are gonna start putting their hands together among, it doesn't matter if it's African Americans, Jamaican, the diaspora in Europe, because there's a big Black community in Europe as well. And I think that sooner or later, we're gonna get there to where we're gonna start working together. In fact, the work already started in Africa right now. There's a big movement been going on since 10 years now, and it's been started by these diaspora kid from France who went back to Africa, and then they in the villages building stuff. They calling on other African brothers to come and put our money together and create banks and stuff. So the work is starting. Mm-hmm. But during the process, I think we should be a little bit more easy with ourselves. I think that we should understand what happened historically, where we messed up, because I think we should take responsibilities. I think that anytime that somebody comes to your community and do something like that, it's your fault. And then if we go back to history, you could see where our responsibility was. And then I think that being successful for too long, having a decline, fighting between tribes, that benefited the intruders, and they used that against us, and that caused disruption on families and stuff like that. And I think that we are going back to where we're gonna be back together. And I think, for me, my perspective is very positive. But going back to Africa, and I was just talking with somebody yesterday about this thing as well. I was saying, hey, you got to choose your bad. Everywhere you go in the world, there is a blessing and a curse.